Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to spend some time going over the requirements for Project 2 Part 3 Design Development. So I'm looking at the Project 2 Part 3 page on Canvas, and I just want to spend a little time going through the requirements. So what we're going to be doing in this phase of the project is selecting your best preliminary space plan and then really developing it to respond to the needs of the client and their goals for the renovated space. So you'll be applying architectural drafting conventions to an interior design project. You'll be, again, analyzing the client's needs as well as the building conditions and constraints. You'll be applying space planning techniques to complex design problems, applying architectural standards and codes to develop structural layouts. You'll be selecting furniture, fixtures, materials for a historic renovation that will suit multiple users, and then you'll document them in schedule form. And then you'll also start to develop a custom brand, identity, and logo for the Airbnb portion of this project. So there are three basic requirements. We're going to be looking at refining a floor plan. We'll be selecting furniture, fixture, equipment, and materials, all the fun stuff. And then you'll be thinking again about that branding identity and logo. So first, refining the floor plan. So you'll be evaluating the three loose floor plans that you created for Part 2, which we've already been discussing, and you'll be selecting the best space plan or best combination to move forward. Then at that point, what you're going to be doing is refining the selected loose floor plan into a drafted floor plan, including some of the following information. So first thing you're going to be doing is locating all interior walls, doors, closets, built-in interior features, etc. So remember, we're not going to be manipulating or changing anything on the exterior. So exterior walls, windows, doors will stay where they are. Porches, stairs, ramps, all of that will stay. So it's everything on the interior. Moving beyond simply the walls and doors and closets and all of that, you will also be doing your first kitchen layout, including cabinets, countertops, appliance locations. So think about locating the refrigerator, cooktop, oven or range, ventilation hood, sink, dishwasher, all of those key components that are covered in our readings and lectures, and think about how you want your kitchen to lay out. This is your first shot at that. Likewise, you'll be designing all of the bathroom layouts, the master as well as the unit bathrooms, any powder rooms, anything like that, and including the appropriate fixtures as well. So of course, toilets, sinks, showers, bathtubs, all of those types of items. So again, this will just be in a plan view, a top-down view, again referencing our readings and lectures for appropriate sizing and spacing. You will also be laying out furniture, fixtures, equipment in all of the rooms. So not just, of course, kitchens and bathrooms, but living room, dining room, rental units. And this will coincide with the selections that you choose. You will also be putting in some basic dimensions. So you will include basic room dimensions, and you can copy the style that's already in the AutoCAD file. You will also include things that have to do with ADA clearances as appropriate. So the 5-foot turning radius for wheelchair turnarounds, note clearances, on sides of beds, in bathrooms, things like that. You'll be looking at noting the 36-inch door width minimum that we're going to be using for this project. So you can just note that on one door and note that it's typical. And any egress corridors that we have to get out of the building have to have a minimum of 44 inches in width, and we'll want to note that with dimensions as well. Then looking into the furniture, fixture, equipment, and materials, you want to think about your entire project. This entire first floor of the Victorian house is having a very cohesive design, of course. But thinking about each space, each room and then each rental unit is having their own identity. And that, really each rental unit should be unique. That doesn't mean you have to get really themey, that one room is tropical themed and one, is winter themed or something like that. But each rental unit should have its own, ambiance, its own flair. They should coordinate with each other, but they should have their own story. Furnishing solutions should, of course, support the users and room functions provided and will be in keeping with the relationship of the existing building. So that does not mean that you have to pick out all Victorian looking furniture, but your style and the way you're treating the space should make sense and be treated appropriately with the interior. So if you want to go really modern, how are you going to accomplish that? And then based on the programming information, think about your artwork, your historical research, local hospitality market research. Select all of these items, furniture, materials, for each room. And the items required will vary a little bit on your design. So for example, not everyone may need to choose a table and chairs for the kitchen, but maybe some people will. Again, it just depends on your personal design, what choices you need to ultimately make. All selections, furniture, materials, etc., will all be digital. So there's no, physical samples required for this project, nothing like that. And you will be creating a schedule for all of this information. So, much like we did on our last project, you'll be including a code, item, manufacturer, product number, and so on. Okay? And then also, as you're, selecting these items, collect inspiration images. Inspiration images of kitchens you think are, inspiring and beautiful and that you might like to emulate. Bathrooms, bedrooms, living rooms, and include these in your booklet, okay? So it's not that you have to, directly copy them, but collecting inspiration images is really, really helpful when you're, deciding what you want spaces to look and feel like. How you choose to display those in your booklet is up to you, whether it's on one page, spread apart room by room, but inspiration images are really, really important. Then you will also be giving your first shot at developing a branding identity, a logo for the space. So you've done some research on, types that you like. So, start sketching out some ideas. Create a name for the Airbnb business of some sort and start working on some custom logos. These can be hand-drawn sketches. They can be done in Illustrator, Photoshop, whatever works for you. So ultimately, what you'll be turning in is one refined floor plan, as we just discussed. And this can be done by hand or in AutoCAD. If you're struggling with software right now or anything like that, you can absolutely turn this in, as a hand-drawn, drafted floor plan. However, I highly, highly, highly encourage that you actually just dive into AutoCAD right now. This will not be your final plan. You're going to need to make changes, and it's so much easier to do in AutoCAD. Plus, that's a piece of software you want to get proficient in and good at, so this is a really good opportunity to do that. You'll also be turning in furniture, fixture, material selections, and schedules. And think of this all as being a rough draft for your final booklet design. So, start laying things out how you want them to be in the final, although they can certainly change. You'll have your, 3 to 4 design ideas for your logo and a cover page as well. And again, this will all be in that 11 by 17 inch format. So, keep in mind that the requirements for Part 3 are a work in progress. So everything that you're turning in for this third submittal for this project will be refined by the end. So it's a work in progress. Know that you're going to need to go back and make changes. Okay? The floor plan should be neat and clean, but will be revised after you submit it, most certainly. And then all of the furniture, fixtures, equipment, materials, all those selections and schedules should, really be presented as a first draft and organized by room or area. So then here you're going to see a list of all of the rooms that are at least standard in this project. Again, you may have some additional rooms you'll need to consider. And then the materials and finishes needed for each space, and then the typical, furniture or equipment. So you can kind of use this as a checklist for what you need. So you'll have, for example, common areas like the foyer and hallway, living room, dining room, kitchen, and so on. And then here for each, you'll see the materials that are really needed. So when you think about materials for each room, for sure you're thinking flooring, wall surface, ceiling surface. So what's on the floor? Wood, tile, carpet, linoleum, LVT, and you may have only one selection per room. There may be multiple. What's on the wall? Is it paint, wood, like millwork, wall covering, metal, like metal, panels or something? What is it? It might be more than one. And then on the ceiling, might just be paint. It could also be, again, wood, metal, possibly wall covering, inset, multiple materials. So you'll really be thinking at least have 3 for each space, but possibly more. And as you get into some more, complicated types of spaces like kitchens or bathrooms, then we'll be thinking about cabinet finish, countertops, backsplashes, things like that. And then for the furniture over on the right, that's kind of a basic list of what do you probably need to show. So for the living room, for example, comfortable lounge seating, sofas, chairs, occasional tables, decorative lighting. You can also include other things, of course, but that's a good start. Dining room will be, of course, dining table and chairs, probably a buffet server type of, piece of furniture, someplace you're storing dishes, linens, things like that. Decorative lighting. And then, of course, when you get into the kitchen, you have the refrigerator, cooktop, oven, and you could have a range, by the way, that has both the oven and cooktop, or they could be separate, depends how you like to design your kitchen. You'll have sink, faucet, dishwasher, hardware, lighting, and then you might have table and chairs, you might have bar stools, it just kind of depends what your design is like. And then each space as we go through, like the master bedroom, the rental units, thinking about beds, nightstands, all of these types of things. Okay, so those are all of the, requirements for this portion of the project. Oh, and actually, while I'm down there, I wanted to make sure to point out for the kitchen. So as you're starting to think about, selecting refrigerators and cooktops and things like that, I want you to look ahead to part 4 of the project because there are either required or suggested manufacturers listed there. So when you go to part 4 of the project, and this is the final requirements, so certainly be looking ahead at what's going to be due, you'll see that there are selections for cabinets. We'll be looking at wood mode. Appliances will all be coming from Sub-Zero Wolf Cove. And then for plumbing fixtures, hardware, tile, and things like that, there are suggested manufacturers to look at. So again, the cabinets will be from wood mode, and the appliances will all be from Sub-Zero Wolf Cove for this project. Again, this is all listed under the final requirements for the project, just so they're all kind of found in one place. Okay, so then looking at a few examples that are also up on Canvas of this project. So this is an intermediary step again, and we'll be changing. So first thing you're going to see is submissions of the revised really first time it's been drafted floor plan. So this is from last year. You'll notice the floor plan is a little different than the one you've been given this year, so please pay attention to that. And then also notice this is just sort of a standalone. This will be incorporated into your final booklet in a nice attractive way, but for this submission you can just kind of use it as is. If you want to rotate it, go ahead, but this can kind of come out a little bit separately for now. By the final we'll crop it out, not have this produced by Autodesk student version and things like that, so it's kind of raw right now. But you'll see that they then went into that AutoCAD file and start manipulating, changing, moving the rooms around. Notice that the walls are again hatched in, so post shade, so they're black here. So each room has been measured, right? We're showing the 5-foot turning radius. We're showing all of the window sizes, labeling the rooms, and so on. So your drafted floor plan will look something similar to this, of course, depending on your layout. And then, each one of these will look a little bit different from different years and, different requirements and things. But this gives you a sense of how students have approached it. So the rooms have been broken down. So this individual went foyer, living room, dining room, and so on. And so you'll see first on each page, they included an inspiration image. And that's a really nice way to do it. So you're including an inspiration image, like this is the kind of vibe I wanted to have. And then this is their first shot at the furniture and materials and things needed for that space. So, kind of occasional table, lighting, paint, wall covering, that type of thing. And then here we're seeing the schedule. So we're seeing a code, and then the item, floor tile, wallpaper, ceiling, the finish, manufacturer, and so on. And you'll see, each person has done this differently, okay? So looking good, we're moving on. Okay, so I get to the living room. Inspiration image, then the furniture, materials, lighting, their first shot at these selections, and then the schedule. And so this person kind of color coordinated their schedule with each page as sort of a graphical element, which is something you could certainly do. Okay, and so it kind of just makes their way through, each space. Now you'll notice something that happens that could be very confusing for someone looking is that for each room, the codes start over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And then we go to the kitchen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is something we want to avoid. Every item, whether it's a material, a piece of furniture, an appliance, piece of lighting, whatever it might be, should all have a distinct code. So that if this was all put in one big chart, everything would have its own code. So don't restart that numbering for each individual room, and that's something we had to fix in the final. Okay, looking at another person's, so here is their floor plan again. So went into the AutoCAD file, manipulated, including rooms, measurements, all of those things we've already talked about. And then kind of their first shot at laying out their pages. Here again showing an inspiration image for each room, kind of that vibe they're going for. And then they actually included their piece of artwork in the living room, furniture, lighting, material selections, their first shot at this. So then including code, item, and so on for their schedule, really just like you did for your last project. So going through each room and making their selections, okay? And then the final example here, this one actually happens to show a cover page. And then again, the floor plan, that's sort of just like its own thing for right now. Again, this will be incorporated in your final. In their first try at their layout, in AutoCAD. And then they have a page of all their inspiration images, colors. Kind of chose to lay it out this way, which is, a perfectly reasonable way to do it. Depends how you'd like to. And then they went through and they actually started to lay theirs out sort of a layered look, cutting things out, layering furniture on tops of paints and woods and wall coverings and all that to really kind of give us a sense of what that space might really feel like. Okay. You'll notice that this is, so far missing the codes, which is going to be an important element that will get added in the final. So please put your codes in already. Okay. And you also notice these pages, they feel a little bit empty at this point, like we don't have the codes. Maybe it would have been stronger to actually include the inspiration images here, put a couple rooms per page, because they're feeling a little bit sparse, but still the idea holds, and it's a nice approach to the project. The selections obviously coordinate very nicely. And then you'll see at the end of this particular example, all the way, got to keep going, they just included their entire schedule in one bulk kind of spreadsheet at this point. And then looking forward for the final, they may have actually broken this apart and put them page by page like the others did. Okay, so there's different options. So while you're thinking about the schedules and like coding, don't make it overly complicated. Whether you choose to do that in Word, Google Docs, Google Sheets, it's up to you. But think about, really dividing the space by space. So go through, make sure you have all of your rooms, foyer, living room, dining room, kitchen, so on and so forth. Put them in a logical order and then let them break apart very, very simply. So you're going to have a code, item, manufacturer, and then, product, and maybe a details column, okay? And then here, for your code, think about what the items are and sort of, give them sort of a letter and number. I think this is a great way to do it. So for code, I might do P1, P2, so on for paint. I do C1, C2, and so on for carpet. That type of thing, like T1, T2 for tile. In whatever system you develop, stick with it. And then for furniture, I might do F1, F2, F3, and so on. For lighting, L1, L2, L3, and so on. And then, if I'm starting here in the living room, I have P1, paint, manufacturer, and I just kind of made these up, so don't look them up. Manufacturer, Benjamin Moore. Product, product number, color, name, and then details, that's satin finish, let's say. P2 is also paint, but this is Sherwin-Williams, product number and name. That's a flat finish, for example. So these will vary a little bit depending on what selections you have. And make your order consistent too. So if you're starting with paint here in the living room, when you get down to dining room, do them in the same order. You may have, more things in some rooms than others, but be really consistent with that order so it's predictable and easy for people to understand. Okay, and then when you go to your next room, don't start over with P1, P2, and so on. Keep adding those numbers up. So then I'm going P3, P4, P5. And so you might end up with, quite a few paint selections, for example, or not. And keep in mind, if I use P1 here, this Benjamin Moore, in the dining room as well, list it here as well. Don't give it a new number. Only give it a new number, a new code when it's new. Okay, so you can repeat them in rooms if they're actually the same material and they do repeat. And once it's new, keep those numbers adding up so that each finish is represented by its own unique code, or you could get really, really confused. Okay, so that's really the kind of the bulk of what you need to be getting started on this project. Keep in mind the examples. They're just examples to kind of give you an idea of how some people approached it. It doesn't mean they're perfect, doesn't mean they have everything. And also keep in mind requirements for different years are different. So it's just an idea. It's just a sense to get you moving forward. But by no means should you be specifically copying anything they've done, because they may have changed it for the final because it wasn't correct, okay? But it's just sort of a jumping off point. So go ahead and get started, because this starts to get into the really, really fun stuff of the project.